Hey everyone, it is Grant Winsauer and
Jack Rody.
back here on the Bear Claw cast, and we have an episode for you guys. We will be discussing the firing of Matt Eberflus, which transpired yesterday after a horrible loss to the um, uh, Detroit Lions. Well, not a horrible loss, but a horrible last minute no no timeout decision by former head coach Matty Eberflus. We will be discussing Thomas Brown as interim head coach, players reacting to not calling a timeout with 30 seconds left, long term answers for head coach at the end of the season, how we will finish out the season with Brown as the leading man, and our reaction to the 23-20 loss to the Lions on Thanksgiving. Um, but before we get into that, how was your Thanksgiving, Jack? And what was your favorite dish that you ate on Thursday?
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for asking, Grant. Kind of a smaller Thanksgiving this year. Just one of my dad's brothers and his family came over, but it was good. I got to see my grandma. And as far as favorite dish, I've been getting on my mom the last couple of years because both my parents say that mac and cheese is not a Thanksgiving food, and I think that's ridiculous. So we finally made some this year, and I made sure to eat about 3 or 4 plates, so it didn't go to waste after begging for it for the last couple of years. How about you? Good Thanksgiving?
Good Thanksgiving. I will admit, I believe that mac and cheese is a Thanksgiving dish, but I will admit, my family does not serve it. I don't. I'm not the guy that loves to have mac and cheese, but I do believe that it is a Thanksgiving dish. So I'm glad that you fought for it.
Thank you.
So let's get into the biggest topic of the last 24 hours. The Bears firing their head coach midseason for the first time in franchise history. And let that just sink in for a second. This franchise has been around for 105 years, and this is the first time that they are doing this. I mean, it's ridiculous that it took them this long to do this because they have not had good head coaches at all. You have to say that George House is a good one because he bought the franchise and he built it. You have to say that Mike Ditka is a good one because he has the one Super Bowl ring. But like recent years, it's just terrible. I mean, how happy are you that this is the final time that we'll be talking about, Matt Eberflus being the head coach with all the mistakes that he's made in the past 6 weeks of his tenure as head coach, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting the Bears to go and win their final 5 games just because we fired Eberflus. But like we were talking before we started recording, and it's just nice to be able to record one of these and not have to say, oh, one of the Bears is going to fire Eberflus. When are they going to do it? They need to do it, blah, blah, blah. It's nice to get on here and finally be able to tell the people that, you know what, the Bears finally actually did it. Eberflus is gone. And now the rest of the season can be focused on evaluating whether Thomas Brown is someone they want to seriously consider as a head coaching candidate and just further refining Caleb Williams' development and making this an even more attractive spot for other candidates to come next offseason.
And we will talk about Thomas Brown more in a little bit, but let's continue on the uh, the trend here. So I read on Thursday night that Poles and Warren were having discussions with players in the locker room for a long time at Ford Field, and that was my first clue that the firing would happen soon. I was a little concerned that it wouldn't happen when he was allowed to talk to the media on Friday over Zoom, and he said, I'm confident I'll be coaching against the 49ers. And when he said that, I think all Bears fans were probably like, we hope not. And all Bears fans got their wish. But how surprised were you that he got to talk to the media yesterday?
Yeah, I think it's very clearly either one of two things. The first option, which I don't think is very likely, is that the Bears just kind of wanted to further have to throw Eberflus under the bus and make him answer more questions just before he was being fired. But option number two, and what I think is most likely what happened, and what I saw some reporting on, is that
Mm-hmm.
the Bears somehow had not made their final decision yet on whether or not they were going to fire Eberflus, and uh, in lieu of postponing the press conference and pretty much making it evident that he was going to be fired, they just let him have the press conference while they were still in discussions on whether or not they were going to. So, kind of just another Bears little ineptitude on display. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I mean, it was kind of weird that you haven't made your decision. When I mean, Jalen Johnson apparently went crazy on him. I, After the Lions game. It wasn't reported what he said to him or anything, but like it was reported that he was the one that was going crazy, and it was all towards Matt Eberflus, which rightfully so. I mean, you have 30 seconds left, and you don't call a timeout. I mean, everyone in their living room was probably screaming, "Call a timeout! Call a timeout!" Like I know all my
my
family
living
was.
room was, yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's just crazy that you've been a head coach for 3 years, and a previous head coach for 3 years, I'm going to say now, uh, and you're making the mistake of not calling a timeout to, make sure that you can get, 5 or 6 more yards to get a game time field goal. I mean, but also, I have a question for Thomas Brown, and I'm just going to ask it right now. Why would you run a quarterback draw with 30 seconds left?
Yeah, I noticed that. I watched the last play and saw that that was what was being called. It was a little bit of an interesting decision there, but we did have the timeout. So I mean, I guess if he thought it was going to get them an easy 8 to 10 yards, then I kind of get it.
Yes, yes. But it was evident that all players were fed up with Flus. Keenan Allen, came out and said, I feel like we did enough as players to win the game, and they sure did. I mean, and if players are definitely not holding back anymore. Because the last couple of weeks they wouldn't say that, but they've been fed up for a long time. Um, and I mean, I just am so glad that this is over. I mean, it's a huge step. Now we can take the next 5 weeks to, research candidates and figure out what the best option is. And uh, who knows? Maybe Thomas Brown will show that he can win, but based on the strength of our schedule, that's a big question mark for me. And also, you have to understand now, Thomas Brown isn't just tasked with overseeing the offense and Caleb Williams' development. He is tasked with overseeing everything, and that is a lot on his plate. And
Yeah,
I believe that he will be a head coach in the near future, but I don't think that he's quite ready for it. But
yeah,
it's these next 5 games could change my mind. But still, I still only think that interim head coach will be his title because you know interim head coaches never you know really work out when you decide to hire them as the head coach. I mean, look at Antonio
Antonio
Pierce.
Pierce. Yeah,
He
that's
technically
the prime
fired his whole
example.
staff and is probably going to get fired at the end of the year. Um, but I mean, again, the strength of the schedule is so hard, and we'll he'll have more on his plate. So it's going to be interesting to see how Thomas Brown handles it. We hopefully he will talk to the media on Monday and give us those answers, or give us some answers on what is changing. But also something that we will have to look at is Eric Washington will most likely be calling the defense now because he is the defensive coordinator. Officially now, even though that is his title. Matt Eberflus was the defensive play caller. Matt Eberflus is now happily gone, and I believe that Washington will take over play calling duties. But what are your thoughts on that? Because we don't really have answers on that. Do you think that will be Washington's responsibility, or will that be someone like John Hoke's responsibility, the quarterback or the cornerbacks coach or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will go to Eric Washington, and it does worry me just kind of the inexperience combined between Washington and Thomas Brown. Like you mentioned, Thomas Brown prior to this year, 8 weeks of play calling
Mm-hmm.
experience combined with three this year, and now he's running an entire team. And Eric Washington, well, he does have a great track record, like we talked about, of helping
Development,
defense, development along the defensive line specifically. He really doesn't have much experience
play
handling
calling,
play calling, which is what we're going to ask him to do. So you might be
sure.
right. They might divvy that up between a couple different guys and make that more of a group effort. But as much as it scares me, nothing scares me more than the locker room just being completely not bought in and out on the season and just giving up. So I think that no matter what, getting Eberflus out of the picture was the right move.
I don't think. I think that that the more aggressiveness of Thomas Brown will help them. I don't I don't say that I don't think they'll give up per se, but because I mean they gave up on Flus. I think Thomas Brown at least has brought the jolt into the team a little bit, but I see where you're coming from. I mean it's just I wonder like why haven't we heard anything about what Thomas Brown's plans are? Now it's probably because they have today and tomorrow off, and they'll come in Monday and they'll have practice. Thomas Brown will have his first press conference as interim head coach, and he'll answer any questions that pertain to defensive play calling. You know, but the thing that one of the things that worries me about uh, Brown taking over as interim head coach, not only does he oversee everything now, he also has to call plays from the sideline. And when he was with the Panthers last year, he did call plays from the sidelines, and it didn't work out that well. And we know that evident in these last 3 weeks, him calling plays from the booth has worked out tremendously. Caleb Williams is, turning into Superman, which when you're the number one draft pick, that's what you're supposed to be. But my question is, will uh, being on the sidelines affect uh, the production of Caleb Williams? What are your
Well,
thoughts on that?
I mean, there's definitely a chance it will. But if the Bears are seriously going to be considering Thomas Brown for the head coaching position next offseason, which it sounds like from all reports they are going to take that as a serious option, you need to see whether or not he can call plays from the sideline now rather than wait until next year.
That's true.
Just just because I mean this season, let's face it, is a lost cause. We're 4-8. Even if we won our last 5 games and finished 9-8, we're not going to make the playoffs in what is a pretty top heavy NFC. So I
Yes.
think it's
Yeah.
just in the best interest of the entire organization to see if Thomas Brown can do it from the sideline. And if he can't, then that's just further proof that we need to look elsewhere for our head coaching options next year.
Yeah. It's been evident for a long time that we weren't going to make the playoffs. I mean, that the Lions are 10 or 11-1 now. The Vikings are
Ten
uh,
and two,
10-2, and then the Packers are not nine and
nine and
three,
three. Yep.
and we're 4-8. We're screwed. And still our remaining schedule is like when you look at the strength of our schedule, I think it's like at like 56% or something. It's still pretty hard, because we gotta face the 49ers this week.
And then
The
Vikings, Lions, Seahawks, and then Packers to close it out.
Yeah, there's one game in that schedule that looks the easiest, and it's the Seahawks game. And yes, I know that the 49ers have been struggling for some crazy reason. I don't know how that is, because they seem to always have the powerhouse of the team. But I mean, Kyle Shanahan's gonna know how to beat Thomas Brown. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just there's so many things that we don't have answers to, um, that we will want answers for, that probably won't be answered until the end of the season. Um, so I mean, it's been pretty evident over the last 6 weeks that the Bears players were fed up with Matt Eberflus, and they couldn't just come out and say it, but finally enough was enough, and Keenan Allen said, he felt like they did enough to win. Kyler Gordon said no comment when asked about the end of the game on Thursday. DJ Moore said, we keep coming back in these games and we have time to actually win the game, and then we just shit the bed. He has also come on a lot of radio shows and sounded disappointed with his former head coach, and rightfully so. I think we can speak for all Bears fans. We're happy that Flus finally got canned. I mean, it was just time, But what are your thoughts about the reaction from the players, and finally, getting to really be in a different environment, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think I pretty much came to terms with the fact that Flus was gone when I saw Keenan Allen's comments. I mean, that's pretty damning to the
Mm-hmm.
coaching staff
Oh,
when he
absolutely.
just the way he worded that. So I was pretty confident that Flus would be gone by this week. But I just think it's nice that clearly players did not like him for better or for worse. I mean, he seems like a good human being. There's nothing wrong with like he was just not a good coach, and sometimes that happens. It just was not the right place for him, and I just am excited that the players hopefully will have someone they're excited to play for now, in both Eric Washington and Thomas Brown leading the charge, rather than being uninspired by Eberflus on a week to week basis.
Yes. Now the question that we will all want answered is, how will Thomas Brown and Eric Washington handle being the leading men in the organization now, and
Anybody's
that's
guess.
what the next 5 weeks are about. I mean, it's just it's it's a big question mark right now. With the Bears firing Matt Eberflus, the Bears get a chance to interview head coaching candidates earlier than other teams who decide to fire their um, head coach at the end of the season. The problem with that is the high-end coaches that our teams should be looking to hire will be going deep into the playoffs, so we will have to wait to see who the Bears will interview. However, if the Bears are smart, they bring in Caleb Williams before they start interviewing candidates and say, okay, Caleb, we are bringing in offensive-minded coaches to further your development. Who are some offensive coaches you would like us to bring in, and we will bring them in for an interview. This is not us saying that Caleb Williams should have sole decision on who becomes the next head coach, but if the Bears believe that he is the franchise for the next 15 to 20 years, he should get a say in who his next coach is. Um, we've already been talking about, or we've already been making a list of possible replacements, so we're not really going to go into who we would like to replace Matt Eberflus, but we would probably take 28 out of 32 head coaches over Matt Eberflus right now. but what would you what are your thoughts on that, Jack? Like who would you think would be on Caleb's list for the next head coach to be considered if you were Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit difficult just because he hasn't been in the league for a long time. Obviously, the one that comes to mind is Cliff Kingsbury, just because they got the chance to work
Mm-hmm.
together at Caleb's
Sure.
last year at USC. He is not someone who's really near the top of my list, to be quite honest with
He's not
you.
on the top of my list either.
The only thing that scares me with him is that his offenses, whether it be because of his play calling or the style of quarterback that he's had in both Kyler Murray and Jaden Daniels, have tended to struggle towards the end of the year and the production really drops off. So I don't know whether that's because those guys have gotten injured. Kyler was hurt a lot in Arizona, and Jaden Daniels obviously has been dealing with the rib injury. But a lot of it could just be his offense is kind of predictable. And Caleb probably had his worst college season under Kingsbury, so I don't know how much he will really want him. And they had a chance to bring him in last offseason as well.
That's true.
So I think it'll really come down to what Caleb can take away from guys in interviews and when they go over playbooks and just type of things that Caleb does well and who can marry their system to what Caleb does best to give the Bears the best chance to win.
Yeah, and actually, I we'll go into that in a little bit because I did put my top three options in the script really quick, just like the top three options, and I may add a fourth, just to see if Jack agrees. But let's go into a scenario where the Bears do decide to hire Thomas Brown as their next head coach. Now, let us be clear: the only way that this scenario will happen in our personal opinions is if Thomas Brown goes 5-0 for the remainder of the season, and we don't see that happening. But hypothetically, if it does, here is a list of uh, coaches that Thomas Brown would be able to bring in to fill out his own coaching staff. Now, I found this list on Twitter. I'm sure that his list might be different, I'm not a reporter, so I'm getting most of my stuff from Twitter, from credible sources. His OC options would be Josh McCown, Wes Phillips, Aubrey Pleasant, uh, Mike LaFleur, some DC options, um, Brandon Staley. I can't say the
A Gyro Avero.
thank you, Jack. I don't know. I don't know how you pronounce his first name. That might be right. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Uh, Chris Shula, who is Don Shula's son, so that might not be that bad of an option. Uh, Eric Henderson, QB coach would be Jake Peets, or our current QB coach, Gary Joseph. Running game coordinator would be uh, Rashid Samples, or Duke Staley, or Deuce Staley, which I actually think that we've had him before. That name looks familiar for some reason. O-line coach could be Andy Dickerson, Nick Jones, Kevin Carberry, uh, Ryan Wendell. Passing game coordinator could be Chris O'Hara, and defensive passing game coordinator could be Jonathan Cooley. Those options are so underwhelming that we think the best course of action is to start fresh and have an offensive mastermind build his own staff. My top three choices would be Ben Johnson, Joe Brady, or Todd Monken. And I'm just going to throw Bobby Slowick in there also as a fourth option. Ben Johnson, for obvious reasons, he's going to be the the hot candidate of the cycle come off season. Joe Brady, because he took over for Ken Dorsey, and then he made the Bills the great, and he also helped Joe Burrow at LSU his final year. And Todd Monken is an experienced assistant coach who brought Georgia to a national championship and then proceeded to transition to the NFL and designed his offense around Lamar Jackson's strengths and got him 2 NFL MVPs. And then I'll add in a little bit on um, Bobby Slowick. Bobby Slowick has been a coach for a long time. He learned under Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan, so he would definitely have the most, you know, uh, I would say knowledge of, coaches to build his staff. Because you wouldn't probably just take, most of um, the Texan staff unless for some crazy reason they all got fired, which won't happen. But honestly, I don't really know who I would choose about from those four, but those four would be my top options. What about you, Jack? Who would be at the top of your list?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with any of those four guys. Those are the four guys that would also top my list. Joe Brady has definitely been making a little bit more noise as of recently. That wasn't a name we heard a lot early on, but I think he actually is or might be the betting favorite right now for the Bears
He
head
is,
coaching
yes,
vacancy.
he is the betting favorite. I saved the favorites actually on my Twitter, and I'm actually let me read them real
Yeah,
quick. So okay, so um,
is Thomas Brown technically the favorite?
okay. Ben Johnson is the number one.
Okay.
Number one. Joe Brady's number two. Thomas Brown's number three. Okay, I'm gonna read the list, but there's three guys on here that shouldn't be on the list. So Aaron Glenn is four. I don't think he should be on the list because he's defensive minded. We don't want that. Liam Cohen, you know,
I wouldn't be opposed. That's one I could be talked into, to be honest with you.
I would have to be talked into it too. Um, Number six is Bill Belichick. I I think he's too old.
Not.
I just, I mean, you probably have to bring him in just because he's.
I don't even
Uh,
know if you do. He's been so
I
outspoken. Like he's not the biggest Caleb guy, and I think that's like the number one prerequisite for
I
taking over
think
this
I think
job.
I think you're right. You know what? I scratch him off the list too. Arthur Smith is number seven, and
Please
Cliff
no.
Kingsbury is number eight. I would probably
They don't
say
even
that
have
the
Munkin on there.
Monken is not on there, which is very surprising. But he's on our list. I mean, I think I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not. I'd be surprised if he wasn't on the Bears list because I mean he's designed his offense to make Lamar Jackson look great.
Yeah, and I
So
mean he coached Stetson Bennett in college, who couldn't be any further from what Lamar Jackson's skill set is now. So he's clearly got a versatile enough offensive
mhm.
that he can craft it around whoever he's coaching.
Yeah, I mean it was I mean so there probably are the list is going to grow, but right now there's probably three or four coaches that we would want as our next head coach. Probably out of the list that I read, Todd Monken makes the most sense in terms of, well, for a couple of reasons. First off, he's an Illinois native, and uh, what's Ryan Poles likes to bring in homegrown talent. Um, but also, with him being 58 years old, he probably knows the most people in the league out of the list, in terms of Ben Johnson and Joe Brady, the other two options that we have. And the question about them is, who's to say that if we were to hire one of Ben Johnson or Joe Brady, that, Dan Campbell would be like, here, take all the assistants that you want to Chicago,
Mm.
or the same thing goes with Joe Brady, you know, I mean, I definitely think that Joe Brady would have the more lenient head coach to give you some assistance, but I don't think Dan Campbell would have that would have that nice demeanor because you're talking about giving your coaching assistance to a division rival.
Mm-hmm.
I
For
mean,
sure.
that's crazy. I mean, so you know, I mean, there are probably four people on the list that we would want. And the thing about the next head coach is he's not going to really need to be part of a rebuild because really you only have to fix the interior of the offensive line and get a second edge rusher to pair with Montez Sweat, and then you're this team's built. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty good positive right there.
For sure.
Um, so I mean, the sad thing is we're not going to know who the coach is for the next 2.5 months,
No, it'll be
probably.
it'll be a lot of speculation, a lot of articles popping up on our timelines with various people saying things that probably
Yeah,
don't know much.
and
So all I'll say is there's going to be a lot of rumors going out there, but none of it matters until the Bears actually have that press conference.
and hypothetically, let's just say that Ben Johnson, the truth about him wanting the Bears head coaching job last year is still true this year. I mean, I would say that they're the Super Bowl favorites for the NFC. So if we were to hire him, we'd have to wait until after the Super Bowl to hire him, or verbally agree. Saying on the phone, hey, after the Super Bowl, I want to give you the head coaching job for the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
Because Kevin O'Connell did that when he was with the Rams, but I mean, no, that was we'd have to wait a long time for that, and that's a long time to wait.
Yeah,
Um, but we're gonna have to wait regardless. So now we're gonna get into the post game reaction um, for the Lions game on Thanksgiving. The Bears had nothing going for them in the first half. They had, I believe, it was only two first downs, and the Lions were up 16-0 going into halftime.
and
Um,
both first downs were the last drive of the half, like with nothing really going on. Like there was 30 seconds, so it didn't even really matter.
right, so you can technically even say that we had zero first downs because those were like pity first downs,
Yeah,
kind
literally.
of. Um, but Caleb turned into Superman in the second half. Uh, he had 34 passing yards in the first half and 222 passing yards with three passing touchdowns in the second half. Two of those touchdowns went to veteran wide receiver Keenan Allen, who has been emerging under interim head coach slash OC Thomas Brown. His third passing touchdown went to number one receiver DJ Moore from 31 yards out, and it was a beautiful throw. The Bears defense also shut down the offensive juggernaut Lions offense in the second half, but the Bears proceeded to fail in the final minute because no one thought it would be a good idea to call a timeout. You had your entire coaching staff on the sideline who could have called a timeout. Um, Let me just say, I don't think not calling a timeout is on Caleb Williams because he is a rookie, and Matt Eberflus had been a head coach for 3 years. He should know when to call a timeout. 30 seconds left, down by three. It's not like you can carry over your timeouts from two upcoming games. But what was your reaction to, uh, you know, um, Caleb Williams having the star-studded second half that he had?
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, it was awesome to watch. I didn't see it coming after watching that first half. I don't think anybody who was watching that game did.
yep.
But just to kind of go to your point on that last timeout, obviously a little bit of the blame has to go to Caleb. Like,
Okay, a little
I
bit,
like
but
a
not.
little bit, but like the mistakes he's made this year have been just like simple little rookie mistakes. Like that's something next year, this time he'll understand. It was a crazy scenario on the road with a rookie quarterback, and I do think that about 85% of it falls on Eberflus for not realizing, okay, we're not getting up to the line quick enough, call a timeout, ensure you at least get a 57-yard field goal off. But I think it's just been awesome watching Caleb in year one, week after week, even though we're not winning these games, put the Bears in position to win the games. It felt like the last couple of years with Justin Fields, who I obviously still hold no ill will towards in my heart, but we'd be
Mhm.
up late in these games and Justin would have an untimely fumble or an untimely pick, and the Bears would just kind of crumble. And it really
Mhm.
feels like we've just had one coaching mistake each game that has prevented us from winning. But like Keenan Allen said, I think the players have been playing well enough to win. And to go into Detroit and only lose by a field goal and have a chance to win, even though it ended so brutally and I'm still not over it completely, I still think overall it's a positive. It just shows how well our team can compete. And if we get the coaching staff right, we have a very bright future ahead. So Caleb's still working towards that 4,000 yards too. A little bit under that 274 mark, but he was close to
Yes,
it.
but he still got past that 247. So
Yes,
that
he did.
he's this game or this past game, he's still on pace to break
The franchise record.
the
Yep.
franchise record. Which
He
honestly, he's been breaking a lot of records lately. He brought
that he has been.
he's broken the pass attempts without a pick record. He broke what else did he break? He
I
broke
don't know, but
the
it sucks that I mean his stats are very similar to Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, but he's definitely got no shot at Rookie of the Year just because I think Bo Nix,
mhm,
honestly, in my opinion, has that wrapped up offensively, unless
mhm.
Brock Bowers just goes nuclear to end the year. But just because the Bears aren't winning as much as those two other teams kind of stinks. But
Sure. I mean that's a great point. But there is something that I actually wanted to get your stance on. So about a month ago, or wait, so it's week 12 and the trade deadline is now week 9 or week 10.
I want to
One of
say
those
it
weeks.
was. I think it was week
One of those weeks,
9.
I think. So about 3 weeks ago, we had a podcast where you asked me, um, would you trade Keenan Allen? And I told you no because of the small
Lack of
return you would
production.
get
Yeah,
because of the limited production. Now let me ask you something. With the recent emergence of Keenan Allen, and possibly if he can continue this trend for the next 5 weeks, do you think it's possible that he could get a small 1 year extension with the Bears?
I think it's really determinant on what he wants to do because I think the Bears would be perfect if he wants too much money. I think the Bears would be perfectly fine sitting there saying we have DJ Moore locked up. We just drafted Romo Dunze,
Mm-hmm.
who has shown flashes this year but hasn't gotten the consistent volume to allow him to produce as much as some of the other first round draft picks that we've seen across the league. Uh, I mean, Keenan's looked great the last couple of weeks. He's that consistent over the middle of the field threat that Caleb clearly feels comfortable throwing to. So I think that if he wants to stay in Chicago and the Bears have it in the budget to not break the bank and overpay him for an extension, I don't see any reason why you would not bring him back as long as the production stays similar to what it's been. Obviously, I'm not asking for 2 touchdowns every game. That would be
Mm-hmm.
silly.
Right, right.
But just some consistent production to end this year where he looks healthy and looks ready to go and motivated for next year.
Yeah, I mean, so I saw a tweet a couple days ago that said that someone asked him, "Where do you see yourself going?" At the end of the year, and his answer was, "It's either Chicago or L.A." So he's either staying or he's going back to his hometown or where he
Fair
was
enough.
drafted, which honestly is fair. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine him in the Jim Harbaugh offense, and he would get to mentor Lad McConkey for probably a year or two, depending on how long he stays in LA before he retires, because he's probably a year or two close to retiring, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I mean, obviously the production's still there at this point, but he's getting up there in age. And I think,
Yeah, right.
obviously, I don't know him personally, but I feel like once you start getting to that age, and your body's taking that toll, I find it hard to believe that anybody would want to keep pushing at any position other than quarterback just because of the protection there is around that position now.
Sure, sure. But I mean, if we could get him, per se for a year for like 15 to 16, I'd probably do it just to see if he could get another 750 and 6 touchdowns
I
for
mean, it's
maybe
a,
a last
I
year.
the only reason I hesitate is because I really do want to see Rome have that chance to break out.
That's true. That's true. I want that too. But I mean,
No, I totally understand where you're coming from. Like, if he's going to be
no,
that
yeah,
safety
yeah,
blanket for Caleb, why not? But yeah, that's
yeah.
just me
But
being
maybe,
selfish.
maybe if you are Ryan Poles in that and the the signing, the front office, you bring in Keenan Allen and you say, okay, we want you to come back, but we also want Rome to transition into the uh, wide receiver 2 position. So could you take maybe 12 or 13 for a
Yeah, and
year?
you never know where his head's at. Like, maybe at this point in his career, he's willing to do that. But I also wouldn't blame him if he's not, because he did just come off of a Pro Bowl season last year, and
Mhm.
obviously is closing out this season strong. So that's definitely a good point, though. I was thinking about that the other day and laughing about how we were saying he had done nothing, and now he's just going nuclear
Nuclear.
a couple weeks. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. So I think, that's going to be our podcast for today. Don't worry, everyone. Matty Eberflus will not ruin any more games for us. The question is, will the uh, staff that we have now make the better decisions for us? We will be back on Monday to react to the press conferences that Thomas Brown and most likely Eric Washington will have on Monday, talking about how everything is going to mesh together for the rest of the season. So we'll give you our reaction to that. This is Grant Winsauer and
Jack Rody.
of the Bear Podcast signing off. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe for the best Bears news possible. Have a good one, everyone.
Have a good one, guys.